Off chances where you look. Obviously, I don't want to block you from seeing the Sea of Galilee. What a great background, and we're going to talk some about the mound itself. So, this is a fascinating site for a number of reasons. You came in by the gateway, so you saw the road, and one of the things that's really nice about this city is it gives you a sense of how you'd approach an Iron Age city. Came up a nice roadway, but you have to go alongside the wall, partly because it's in the town, but also if you're an invading army, that means you have to go alongside the wall where all the soldiers are posted. Then you come to the outer gate, which you have to get through. You got to batter down, you got people shooting at you from that. Then you come into the courtyard and have to turn a corner, which is a disadvantage, and get into another gate. And there's towers associated with the gates as well, so they're way up above you and able to shoot down on you. So it's a really graphic example of one strategy for defending a city in the Iron Age, in the time of David, the 10th century BC. The site also has, I trust you noticed, all of the cultic installations. Eitan was pointing out the little place to the side of the inner gate, the right side as you face the gate, where you could have your offerings left. You also had on either side of the gate the standing stones, or the matzevot, which were a Canaanite, sort of the idea is sort of like they concentrate divine power there, and you need to honor and reverence the divinities through these stones. And then there's a sacrificial high place. I trust you saw as we came down the path on your left. There's all sorts of setups for worshiping the different deities of Gesher, presumably. And so we come over to here, according to the archaeologists, but much less visually helpful for us. Right back there is the palace. And as we go down the path towards the first century city, you'll see a label for the palace. So this was an important site, clearly, if it has a palace and a large gate, which is supposed to be one of the largest gates from that period. The Old Testament story, as Eitan has indicated, is both a royal romance and a revolting tragedy, all in one. The royal romance starts in 2 Samuel 3, verse 3, where it says, "Sons were born to David in Hebron." You go by the firstborn, Amnon, second, Kileab, the son of Abigail, and the third, Absalom, the son of Maacah, daughter of Talmai, king of Gesher. Most assume that she came from here. This was the capital city. She was a princess in the palace here. This was her place, and as part of a political alliance, I qualified romance with royal, because in those days, royal romance wasn't really what we think of as romance. You send your daughter to marry a king, and she becomes one of his harem, and it in a sense cements a treaty. You're not going to attack a nation where your daughter is one of the queens in the harem. So it's really not all that romantic when you think about it. However, she generates Absalom, and it tells us also in 13, verse 1, that there's another child who's born to this union. In the course of time, Amnon, son of David, fell in love with Tamar, the beautiful sister of Absalom, son of David. So Tamar is also a daughter of Maacah and David. And of course, you know the story. Amnon rapes Tamar. Absalom kills Amnon in revenge. And the king is upset, weeping bitterly by the end of chapter 13. 1337, Absalom fled and went to Talmai, son of Ammihud, the king of Gesher. But King David mourned many days for his son. After Absalom fled and went to Gesher, he stayed there 3 years. And King David longed to go to Absalom, for he was consoled concerning Absalom's death. So Maacah comes from here when Absalom murders his brother who has raped his sister. He murders his half-brother who has raped his sister. He flees to grandpa, basically. He flees to the family up here to hide because it's technically outside the boundaries of Israel. He stays here for 3 years until he gets word that David really is ready to have him back. And he will go back, undermine his father's administration by saying, I'm more efficient, I have an MBA, and get people to gradually identify with him as a leader. His conspiracy becomes a full-blown revolt, and David must flee Jerusalem. And you know the story well. The revolt is a disaster for Absalom because advisors who are sent in from David's side, Hushai, the Archite, is sent in to undo the advice that Absalom was trusting, and there is a delay which allows David to regroup his forces, and when Absalom's forces engage them in battle, David's forces win a resounding victory, and Absalom is killed, famously getting caught in the tree and then killed. So the Old Testament story gives you a royal romance, which isn't really a romance, and a revolt. And that's all linked into this site here. The New Testament connection is also interesting. When you get back to the bus, look at your maps. Bethsaida, whether it is here or a mile or two closer to the lake, forms one point in what's referred to in commentaries often as the Gospel Triangle, which is Bethsaida, somewhere right around here, back to Capernaum, which you know and love, and Chorazin, which is up in the hills beyond Capernaum, sort of in that direction. A tremendous amount of Jesus' ministry was carried out in this triangle on the north end of the Sea of Galilee, which is why it's referred to as the Gospel Triangle. So we don't know whether this was Bethsaida or not for certain, as Eitan's explained. There's another site that's been discovered closer to the sea, or the lake, that is called Tel El Araj, that would be a plausible place also for Bethsaida. Though, so you have different, Stephen Notley in the Sacred Bridge Atlas of Bible Lands, one of the most comprehensive atlases of biblical times, argues that it's got to be Tel El Araj, this can't be the site, and a number of others argue this is the site of Bethsaida. And their explanation is this was actually much closer to the Sea of Galilee originally, but in 363, AD 363, there was a major earthquake that caused a damming up of the Jordan River upstream from here. And at a certain point, the water pressure got great enough that it broke through the jam and released all the water carrying sediment down the valley, and enough sediment was added that it actually moved the shoreline out a mile or so. So that remains to be resolved. But in Mark, if you look at Mark chapter 6, well, let's do something before Mark. You look at John chapter 1 if you've got your Bible, because it tells us in John 1:44, Philip, like Andrew and Peter, was from the town of Bethsaida. Philip then finds Nathanael. It doesn't say Nathanael's from here necessarily, and says, we found the one Moses wrote about in the law and about whom the prophets also wrote, Jesus of Nazareth, the son of Joseph. To which Nathanael famously responds, Nazareth? Can anything good come from there? Come and see, said Philip. So we know definitively from the text that 3 of the 12 counted Bethsaida as their hometown. Philip, Andrew, and Peter. Others have suggested James and John come from here, that there's nothing in the text that actually says that explicitly, and they might also have been based in Capernaum, because you remember they're in this fishing business with their father Zebedee, who has all these hired hands in the boats, and there seems to be a connection that they have when John is able to know the high priest's household down in Jerusalem. He's the one who tells us the name of the servant who's right here being here. Thank you for all that you give us just from the context, from seeing the geography, the layout, the place, thinking about the history and the time, all the dimensions. Thank you for Eitan and all that he's provided, and all the rich treasury of knowledge he draws on to fill in these pictures for us. We pray, though, that you would give us a real sense of connection with you while we're here. We know that you, Lord Jesus, even withdrew with your disciples to get their attention, to sense what you're saying. You would go apart to pray, to focus on the Father. So we've come apart